Ever had someone talk way too close with breath that could melt paint? Now imagine that person is your romantic lead, on camera, with the whole world watching. Welcome to classic Hollywood, where bad breath was just part of the job. Silent stars, loud smells. In the 1920s, movie stars didn't need to talk. It was the silent film era. No sound, no dialogue. So no one cared if an actor had bad teeth or nasty breath. As long as their face looked good on screen, they were golden. Most people didn't brush their teeth often. Toothpaste wasn't common yet. Some used baking soda, others just didn't bother. Even in Hollywood, smiles were full of cavities, missing teeth, and stinky breath. Douglas Fairbanks had a great smile, but most stars didn't. Dentists were only called when the pain got too bad to ignore. A lot of actors had infected gums, rotting molars, and breath that could knock someone over. Gross. But no one could hear it, so it didn't matter. Still, behind the scenes, some directors asked actors not to open their mouths too wide. Not for the camera, because of the smell. Film sets were small. Hot lights made people sweat. Add in breath that smelled like a garbage can, and you've got a problem. Back then, no one really talked about bad breath. It wasn't seen as a health issue. Stars tried to cover it up with mouthwash or cloves, but most mouthwash had alcohol, which dried out the mouth and made things worse. By the late 1920s, studios started sending stars to private dentists. Not to fix the smell, just to make teeth look better on screen. One dentist said some actors had teeth black as coal. Infections, loose teeth, and bleeding gums were common. Since movies had no sound, looks came first. But change was coming. Talking films were about to hit the screen. That meant close-ups of mouths. And suddenly, having rotten teeth wasn't just gross. It could ruin a career. Hollywood was about to face the truth. Bad breath doesn't work in Technicolor. Enter the fake smile. When sound hit the movies, everything changed fast. Actors had to speak clearly, and suddenly, teeth mattered. The camera zoomed in closer. Bad breath and rotten teeth were no longer easy to hide. That's where Dr. Charles Pincus stepped in. A dentist in Los Angeles, he started working with actors who needed quick fixes. In 1928, he came up with a simple idea. Thin, fake teeth caps made from porcelain. He glued them over bad teeth, making smiles look bright and straight, just for the cameras. They didn't last long, maybe a few hours, but that was enough to get through a scene. Pincus didn't just fix teeth. He created the first Hollywood smile. Movie stars could look perfect on screen without any painful dental work. Studios loved it. So did the actors. Joan Crawford was one of the first big stars to use veneers. She had dental problems, including root decay and gum issues. Pincus gave her a brand new smile that helped her stay on top. Soon, other stars followed. But these weren't real fixes. The teeth underneath were still damaged. Most stars still had infections, missing teeth, and breath that reeked. The fake smile was just that. Fake. Still, it worked. On camera, they looked flawless. Behind the scenes, actors dealt with pain, gum bleeding, and daily discomfort. Some couldn't eat solid food without removing their caps, but they kept smiling for the public. The pressure to look perfect was growing fast. Studios started making dental checkups part of the job, not for health, but for the look. If your teeth weren't camera-ready, your career was at risk. By the early 30s, fake smiles were everywhere, and the idea of perfect teeth became a Hollywood standard. But underneath all that porcelain, the problem was still rotting. Clark Gable's breath clears the room. He had the looks, the voice, and the charm. But up close, not so pretty. By the time he starred in Gone with the Wind, Gable had a mouth full of dentures. He lost most of his teeth young thanks to gum disease and poor care. And those fake teeth gave him a big problem. Awful breath. His co-star, Vivien Leigh, didn't hide how she felt. During their famous kissing scenes, she reportedly gagged. Crew members said she used peppermint oil just to get through filming. Gable's breath was strong enough to stop conversations. Dentures in the 1930s weren't great. They didn't fit well, slipped during lines, and trapped bacteria. That meant constant bad breath. And since actors smoked a lot back then, it only made things worse. Gable was a heavy smoker, which dried his mouth and added to the smell. The studio knew about it but didn't say much. Gable was a box office star. Still, word spread behind the scenes. Some actresses tried to avoid scenes with him. One makeup artist said she kept tissues with cologne on hand just in case. What made it worse? Gable reportedly refused to remove his dentures even during dental exams. He didn't want to be seen without them, even by his own dentist. That pride kept him in pain and made treating the odor nearly impossible. Gable wasn't the only one. Many stars had similar issues but weren't as famous. The spotlight on Gable made his breath part of Hollywood gossip. He visited dentists often, but treatment options were limited. Mouthwash helped a little, but it didn't fix the cause, and denture care back then wasn't as strict as it is today. Despite all this, Gable stayed on top. His charisma overpowered the stink. But his story showed one big thing. Hollywood could cover up bad teeth, but it couldn't hide bad breath forever. Marlene Dietrich's cheekbone obsession. She had one of the most iconic faces in Hollywood, but it didn't come naturally. She was known for her sculpted cheekbones and sharp jawline. Turns out she had dental surgery to help create that look. In her 30s, Dietrich had several molars removed, not for dental reasons, but to hollow out her face. Pulling the back teeth created a sunken look in her cheeks, which made her bone structure pop more on camera. It was painful, permanent, and completely unnecessary medically. There weren't implants or fillers back then. So stars looking for a certain look had to get creative and extreme. Dietrich wasn't alone in doing this, but she was one of the most famous. She worked closely with makeup artists and lighting experts to control how every inch of her face looked on screen. She taped her temples and pulled her skin tight to smooth wrinkles. Removing molars was just another step in that intense beauty routine. Dietrich was obsessed with perfection. Her dentist later said she didn't smile unless she was sure every tooth looked flawless. She rarely ate on set, partly because of her dental pain and partly to stay thin. This wasn't a quiet secret either. People in the industry talked about it, but instead of being shocked, many admired her dedication. If yanking out teeth meant a longer career, some stars thought it was worth it. The pressure was high. Aging meant fewer roles, and flaws could ruin your marketability. Hollywood didn't just want pretty smiles. It wanted bone structure, jawlines, and camera-ready silhouettes, no matter the cost. Freddie Mercury and his extra teeth. He didn't hide his teeth, he built his whole image around them. The Queen frontman had 4 extra teeth in the back of his mouth. This pushed his front teeth forward, giving him that famous overbite. Mercury was self-conscious about it. He often covered his mouth when he laughed, but he never got surgery. He believed his unique mouth shape helped create his powerful voice, and he didn't want to risk changing his sound. That decision wasn't just personal, it was legendary. Freddie's vocal range was unmatched. Some vocal coaches say the extra space in his mouth may have helped him hit those high, clear notes. Whether that's fully true or not, Mercury believed it, and that belief shaped his entire look and performance style. At the time, most celebrities were fixing their teeth. Veneers, whitening, braces, it was all happening. But Freddie didn't care about blending in. He leaned into the flaws, and fans loved him for it. He wasn't alone. British stars in the 70s and 80s weren't as obsessed with the Hollywood smile. David Bowie, for example, had uneven teeth for years before finally getting dental work in the early 2000s. Mick Jagger never touched his. This marked a shift. In the UK, imperfect teeth weren't a deal breaker. It created a split between the polished American movie star look and the more natural British rock style. And for a while, that gap worked in Mercury's favor. Still, the media didn't always go easy. His teeth were mocked in tabloids. Some photographers even edited them out of magazine shots. But Mercury didn't flinch. He owned it. His story was rare. A superstar who didn't fix his teeth, didn't care about Hollywood rules, and still ruled the stage. The rise of the veneer era. By the 1990s, fake teeth weren't just for the camera. They were for daily life. Cosmetic dentistry exploded, and suddenly every actor, talk show host, and soap opera star had the same unnaturally white, perfectly square smile. Veneers became the go-to fix. Unlike the flimsy caps from the 1920s, the newer versions were stronger, longer-lasting, and glued on for good. Stars didn't just cover up bad teeth, they erased them. Tom Cruise was one of the most talked-about examples. Early in his career, he had misaligned teeth, noticeable even in early films like The Outsiders. But by the time Mission Impossible hit theaters, his grin had transformed. He'd reportedly undergone braces, whitening, and veneers. Ben Affleck also got a major dental upgrade. When he starred in Armageddon, producers allegedly requested dental work before filming. The result? A brighter, straighter smile that became part of his leading man image. Julia Roberts, George Clooney, Nicolas Cage. By the late 90s, everyone had that ultra-bright, near-blinding smile. Teeth weren't just cleaned, they were bleached several shades beyond natural. Dentists offered color charts that topped out at Hollywood white. But this new era wasn't all positive. A lot of stars shaved down healthy teeth just to fit the veneers. The process was irreversible, and some suffered long-term sensitivity and damage. Still, no one wanted to be left out. Late-night hosts joked about it. Magazines ran before and after spreads. Even B-list celebs started investing in smile makeovers to land better roles. The pressure wasn't limited to actors either. Musicians, news anchors, reality stars, anyone on TV felt the heat. The look became so common it almost felt mandatory. Natural teeth? Outside unique smiles? Not anymore. By the end of the decade, Hollywood had one face, one jawline, and one row of perfect teeth. The British-American smile divide. As Hollywood pushed polished perfection, the British entertainment world didn't. British actors, musicians, and TV personalities didn't rush to fix their teeth, and that stood out. When Hugh Grant showed up in 4 Weddings and a Funeral with slightly crooked teeth, no one in the UK blinked. In America, it was a whole conversation. Tabloids zoomed in. Critics commented. But Grant became a heartthrob anyway. Proof that charm beat out veneers. The differences ran deep. In the U.S., straight white teeth were tied to success and status. Dental work was expected, especially in film and TV. In the UK, a natural smile wasn't seen as a flaw. There wasn't the same cultural push for perfect. British stars like Kate Winslet, Ricky Gervais, and Helena Bonham Carter kept their natural teeth for years. Some eventually got work done, but only after crossing into Hollywood roles. The pressure didn't start at home. It started in L.A. when American and British stars shared the screen. The difference was obvious. Directors even adjusted lighting and camera angles to balance smiles. Some actors joked about it in interviews. Others weren't thrilled. Comedian Amy Lou Wood once said in a Glamour interview that British teeth had personality and didn't need to be bleached into oblivion. She called out the pressure to conform, especially for young women breaking into the U.S. scene. It wasn't just about looks, it was about class. In Britain, overdone teeth could signal trying too hard. In America, not fixing them looked careless. The culture clash became a running joke in late-night monologues and press junkets. Still, by the 2000s, the Hollywood influence was spreading. More UK stars began whitening, straightening, and veneering as they took on blockbuster roles. The smile gap was closing, but not without a few awkward moments. Veneer regrets and dental disasters. Not all Hollywood smiles aged well. As veneers got more popular, so did horror stories about cracked teeth, bad bonding, and dental do-overs. Miley Cyrus talked openly about getting her teeth redone and how she regretted rushing into it. Early photos show a noticeably different smile. Later, she admitted she wished she had waited or done it differently. Same goes for Zac Efron. Before High School Musical, his teeth were more spaced and natural. After Fame hit, his grin transformed. Fans noticed the change, and while it was never a scandal, some longtime followers missed his original look. Then there's Hilary Duff. In the mid-2000s, she debuted a brand new smile, bright, straight, and shockingly different. But the veneers were too big for her mouth. Critics called it horse teeth in headlines. She later had them redone with a smaller, more natural shape. One of the biggest issues with veneers? They require shaving down your real teeth. Once they're gone, there's no going back. And if the bonding fails, you're left with exposed nerves and pain. Actor Tom Cruise reportedly had to redo his veneers multiple times due to wear and misalignment. He even wore braces in his 40s to correct the bite beneath the surface. Veneers can also stain at the edges or pop off mid-interview. One pop star once canceled a TV appearance because a veneer came loose minutes before air. Celebs may smile on camera, but behind the scenes, the pressure to maintain those perfect teeth is constant and expensive. Dental experts now warn against rushing into cosmetic work too young. But in Hollywood, where cameras are always rolling, the pressure starts early. And bad veneers? They're hard to hide. Paul Rudd's dental disaster. He doesn't age, doesn't cause drama, and somehow never misses. But even the most charming man in Hollywood isn't immune to dental chaos. In an interview, Rudd shared a story that still makes fans cringe. He went to a new dentist, one he didn't fully trust, but figured, hey, he's a professional. The dentist told him he had a dozen cavities. 12. That number felt off, but Rudd went ahead and got them all filled. What happened next? Constant pain. His teeth became incredibly sensitive. Cold drinks hurt. Air hurt. He couldn't eat or smile comfortably. Something was clearly wrong. Later, a second opinion revealed the truth. He never had that many cavities. The fillings weren't necessary. His teeth had been drilled into for no reason. That dentist just got it completely wrong, or worse, took advantage of him. This wasn't about vanity. It was about basic dental health. And it's not uncommon, especially in Hollywood, where cosmetic procedures are pushed hard. Dentists in high-end zip codes often recommend work that isn't needed, especially when the patient is famous. There's big money in cosmetic dentistry, veneers, bonding, crowns. These procedures can cost thousands per tooth. Some celebrities pay $50,000 or more for a complete smile overhaul, but when the work goes wrong, it's hard to fix. Teeth that are unnecessarily drilled may need root canals later. Gums can recede, nerves can be damaged. The result is long-term pain and permanent changes. Rudd's case became a cautionary tale. It reminded fans that even stars who seem untouchable can get bad advice, and it showed that once your natural teeth are altered, there's no going back. Many celebrities now double or triple check before getting work done, and more stars have spoken up about botched dental jobs, though most stay quiet to protect their image. TikTok exposes the truth. If Instagram made perfect teeth popular, TikTok is pulling the mask off, one viral post at a time. Creators on the app, especially dentists and dental students, are using the platform to expose what's fake, overdone, or just plain risky when it comes to celebrity smiles. The tag number Tooth Talk now has millions of views. It's where users break down who's had veneers, what went wrong, and how to spot dental work in close-ups. Some posts show side-by-sides of stars like Zac Efron, Miley Cyrus, and Ben Affleck, comparing red carpet photos before and after their smile makeovers. Others call out obvious veneers fails, pointing to teeth that are too big, too white, or shaped like bathroom tiles. There's even a term for it now: veneers lisp. That's when oversized veneers change the way someone speaks. One TikToker racked up millions of views after explaining how thick porcelain can interfere with pronunciation. It's not all negative, though. Some creators use TikTok to celebrate dental glow-ups, especially when the work is subtle. When a celeb gets bonding or braces instead of jumping straight to full veneers, they get praise for keeping it real. The platform has also started a conversation about regret. More people, famous and not, are talking openly about bad dental decisions. They're posting before and afters with honest captions like, "Wish I kept my real teeth," or "Did this too young." Even dental professionals have joined in. Some explain the risks of shaving down healthy teeth just to fit veneers. Others break down the cost of maintenance, replacements every 10 to 15 years, potential nerve damage, and future surgeries. And fans, they're paying attention. What used to be seen as glamorous now comes off as a little desperate. Younger generations are starting to value individuality again. Crooked teeth, gaps, imperfect smiles. Hollywood's fake smile era isn't over, but it's definitely under the microscope. And with TikTok watching, there's nowhere to hide. The smiles might be camera-ready, but now everyone wants to know what's really behind them. Behind the red carpet lies a darker side of fame. Hollywood icons revered by millions, caught in the most jaw-dropping drunken scandals. From Errol Flynn's wild escapades to Robert Downey Jr.'s struggles, uncover the secrets the stars tried to hide. This is the real Hollywood. Errol Flynn's Wild Nights, 1940s. An iconic actor of the 1940s known for his swashbuckling roles in films like The Adventures of Robin Hood and Captain Blood, Errol Flynn was infamous for his off-screen antics. Flynn's penchant for heavy drinking and partying led to numerous scandals. One of the most notorious incidents occurred in 1942 when he was arrested for statutory rape involving two underage girls, Betty Hansen and Peggy Satterlee. Although he was acquitted, the trial brought his wild lifestyle into the spotlight. Flynn's behavior was a staple of Hollywood gossip columns. He was often seen at bars and nightclubs, drinking excessively and getting into brawls. His favorite haunts included the famed Trocadero on the Sunset Strip and the Macambo nightclub, where he would often be found in the company of fellow actors and high-profile socialites. Flynn's notorious parties at his Mulholland Drive estate, nicknamed Cirrhosis by the Sea, were legendary for their debauchery, attracting Hollywood's elite and often ending in chaos. His autobiography, My Wicked, Wicked Ways, detailed many of these exploits, cementing his reputation as one of Hollywood's original bad boys. The book provides a vivid account of his hedonistic lifestyle, including tales of drunken escapades and romantic entanglements. Flynn once reportedly quipped, "I like my whiskey old and my women young," a line that epitomized his carefree and often reckless approach to life. Despite his personal life, Flynn continued to have a successful career. He starred in several notable films during the 1940s, including They Died with Their Boots On and Gentleman Jim. Spencer Tracy's Struggles with Alcohol, 1950s. One of Hollywood's most respected actors, Spencer Tracy battled alcoholism for much of his life. Known for his roles in classics like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner and Inherit the Wind, Tracy's drinking often affected his work. In the 1950s, his struggle became more apparent, with multiple incidents of public intoxication. One particularly notable event occurred in 1953 when Tracy was found passed out in the lobby of the Beverly Hills Hotel after a night of heavy drinking. His drinking affected his health and led to several hospitalizations. He often experienced severe hangovers and dehydration, requiring medical attention. Tracy's longtime companion, Katharine Hepburn, frequently stepped in to support him, even going so far as to monitor his drinking and assist him in his recovery efforts. Despite his struggles, Tracy's talent remained undeniable. He continued to deliver powerful performances in films such as Bad Day at Black Rock and The Old Man and the Sea. His ability to convey deep emotion and complexity in his characters made him a beloved figure in Hollywood. Directors admired his professionalism on set, even though they were aware of his battles with alcohol. Tracy's alcoholism strained his relationships with colleagues and affected his physical appearance. His once robust frame became increasingly frail, and his face showed the signs of heavy drinking. Yet, his performances never wavered in their intensity and brilliance. Hepburn once said of Tracy, "He was a drunk, but he was my drunk," highlighting her unwavering support and love for him despite his addiction. His addiction also took a toll on his family life. Tracy was separated from his wife Louise, although they never divorced, largely due to his Catholic faith. His children, John and Susie, were deeply affected by his alcoholism and the instability it brought to their lives. Judy Garland's troubled life, 1960s. The beloved star of The Wizard of Oz, Judy Garland had a tumultuous life marked by substance abuse. In the 1960s, her struggles with alcohol and prescription drugs became more pronounced. Garland's dependence on substances led to erratic behavior and numerous incidents of public intoxication. In 1964, Garland was found intoxicated and disoriented in a London hotel. She had to cancel several performances due to her condition. Her addiction issues were further exacerbated by the pressures of constant touring and financial difficulties. Despite attempts to rehabilitate her image, her addictions continued to plague her. Garland's manager, Stevie Phillips, described her as being so drunk she couldn't stand, highlighting the severity of her condition. Her substance abuse and deteriorating health made it difficult for her to secure stable work in the industry. Her once radiant voice and commanding stage presence were often overshadowed by her personal struggles. Nevertheless, Garland managed to deliver a few notable performances during this period, including a memorable concert at Carnegie Hall in 1961, which became a best-selling album and earned her a Grammy. Garland's relationships also suffered due to her addictions. She went through multiple marriages and divorces, each contributing to her emotional instability. Her children, including Liza Minnelli, often witnessed her struggles, adding a layer of familial tension to her already chaotic life. Garland's attempts at sobriety were frequent, but often short-lived, as the demands of her career and personal life repeatedly drove her back to substance use. Dean Martin's party persona, 1950s to 1970s. A member of the famous Rat Pack, Dean Martin was known for his smooth voice and charming on-screen presence. Off-screen, Martin cultivated a persona of the perpetual partygoer, often seen with a drink in hand. While some of his drinking was part of his act, Martin did have a penchant for alcohol. Throughout the 1950s to the 1970s, Martin's love for drinking was well documented. He often appeared on stage and television seemingly inebriated, playing into his laid-back, fun-loving image. His performances on The Dean Martin Show and the Dean Martin Celebrity Roasts featured him frequently sipping what appeared to be alcoholic beverages, adding to his carefree persona. This image was so convincing that many believed he was always under the influence, even though much of it was for show. Martin's association with the Rat Pack, alongside Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., and others, only solidified his reputation as a hard-drinking entertainer. Their performances in Las Vegas were legendary for their humor, music, and revelry, with Martin often playing the role of the amiable drunk. Despite his heavy drinking, Martin maintained a successful career in music, film, and television. He starred in a series of popular films, including Some Came Running and Rio Bravo, and recorded numerous hit songs like Everybody Loves Somebody and Ain't That a Kick in the Head. Behind the scenes, Martin's drinking did have its limits. His daughter, Dina Martin, once said, "He liked to drink, but he knew his limits," suggesting that his on-stage persona was partly an act. In reality, Martin was known to switch his whiskey glass for apple juice during performances to maintain his composure while still entertaining the crowd. Marlon Brando's off-screen drama, 1950s to 1970s. Celebrated for his roles in A Streetcar Named Desire and The Godfather, Marlon Brando was known for his unpredictable behavior and off-screen drama. In the 1950s, Brando's temperamental nature and disdain for Hollywood norms led to clashes with directors and producers. His personal life was equally chaotic, with numerous affairs and a penchant for excess. By the 1970s, Brando's behavior became even more erratic, with reports of heavy drinking and weight gain affecting his performances. Despite these issues, his talent kept him in demand, although his career was marked by these tumultuous periods. One of Brando's most infamous episodes occurred in 1953 during the filming of The Wild One. Known for his method acting, Brando immersed himself fully into the rebellious character he portrayed. Off-screen, he continued this behavior, frequently getting into altercations and showing up drunk on set. His clashes with director Laszlo Benedek and other crew members became legendary, further cementing his reputation as difficult but brilliant. In the 1960s, Brando's heavy drinking became more public. While filming Mutiny on the Bounty in Tahiti in 1962, his off-screen antics caused significant delays and budget overruns. He would often disappear for days, indulging in alcohol-fueled parties that disrupted the production. His unpredictable behavior led to frequent arguments with the film's director, Louis Milestone, and the studio, which struggled to keep the project on track. By the 1970s, Brando's erratic behavior and physical decline were evident. His performance in The Godfather was critically acclaimed, yet behind the scenes, his unpredictable actions and excessive drinking caused tension. His weight gain and lack of discipline were issues that directors had to navigate delicately. On the set of Last Tango in Paris, director Bernardo Bertolucci had to manage Brando's erratic schedule and moods, often exacerbated by his drinking. Elizabeth Taylor's tumultuous love life, 1950s to 1970s. Known for her roles in Cleopatra and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Elizabeth Taylor was as famous for her tumultuous personal life as she was for her acting. Throughout the 1950s to the 1970s, Taylor's numerous marriages and publicized affairs made headlines. Her relationship with Richard Burton, fueled by passion and alcohol, was particularly notable. The two married and divorced twice, with their fiery relationship often playing out in the public eye. Taylor's struggles with substance abuse, including alcohol and prescription drugs, further complicated her personal life and career. One of the most infamous incidents highlighting Taylor's issues with alcohol occurred during the filming of Cleopatra in the early 1960s. Taylor and Burton's on-set affair, fueled by their heavy drinking, became a public scandal. The media frenzy surrounding their relationship overshadowed the film itself. Paparazzi frequently captured the couple leaving bars and nightclubs in a drunken stupor, fueling tabloid stories and public fascination with their tumultuous romance. Another notable episode happened in 1974 when Taylor and Burton were dining at the Dorchester Hotel in London. Both had been drinking heavily, and a heated argument ensued which quickly escalated into a loud and public confrontation. The incident ended with Taylor throwing a glass of wine in Burton's face. Such public displays of their volatile relationship, often exacerbated by alcohol, became a regular spectacle for the press, and further cemented their reputations as Hollywood's most tempestuous couple. Peter O'Toole's legendary drinking, 1960s. Peter O'Toole, known for his iconic role in Lawrence of Arabia, was famous for his heavy drinking throughout the 1960s. His off-screen escapades were as legendary as his performances. One night in 1963, O'Toole and fellow actor Richard Harris reportedly drank their way through several London pubs, ending in a drunken brawl that required police intervention. O'Toole himself recounted in an interview, "I did quite enjoy the taste of alcohol a lot, and there were nights when I would drink a bar dry." His drinking was so notorious that in one incident he was found passed out in a public fountain in Rome. This wild lifestyle often led to outrageous antics that became the stuff of Hollywood legend, like the time he supposedly rode a camel through the streets of Dublin after a night of heavy drinking. Despite his wild behavior, O'Toole's talent kept him in high demand. Directors and producers were willing to overlook his off-screen antics because of his exceptional acting abilities. He delivered powerful performances in films such as Beckett and The Lion in Winter, earning him critical acclaim and several Academy Award nominations. However, his drinking began to take a toll on his health and reputation. He was known to show up on set late or inebriated, causing frustration among his colleagues. O'Toole's drinking also led to numerous health issues. He underwent surgery in the late 1970s for pancreatitis, a condition exacerbated by his excessive alcohol consumption. His doctors warned him that he had to stop drinking if he wanted to live, which prompted him to significantly reduce his alcohol intake. Despite these challenges, O'Toole continued to act, delivering memorable performances well into his later years. Richard Burton's public drunkenness, 1970s. Another star of the 1960s and 70s, Richard Burton was infamous for his public bouts of drunkenness. Known for his turbulent relationship with Elizabeth Taylor, their fights were often fueled by alcohol. In 1974, during a visit to London, Burton was seen staggering out of a bar, barely able to walk. One notable incident occurred in 1975 when Burton was ejected from a theater after causing a scene during a performance. According to witnesses, he was shouting incoherently and had to be physically removed. The media had a field day, and the story was splashed across headlines. This public humiliation highlighted the extent of his alcohol dependency and its impact on his public image. Burton's drinking habits were well documented and became part of his public persona. He was often seen with a drink in hand at social events, parties, and even on film sets. His penchant for alcohol not only strained his relationships but also affected his professional life. Directors and co-stars often had to contend with his unpredictable behavior and frequent absences due to his drinking binges. Despite these incidents, Burton continued to work, though his excessive drinking affected his performances and health. His once powerful voice and commanding presence began to wane, and his roles became less frequent and less prominent. He starred in several notable films during this period, including The Exorcist II, The Heretic, and Equus, but his performances were often overshadowed by his off-screen antics. Burton's health deteriorated significantly due to his drinking. He suffered from liver cirrhosis and other alcohol-related illnesses, leading to multiple hospitalizations. Despite the toll on his body, Burton seemed resigned to his fate. He once said, "I was drunk for years. I was happy drunk," reflecting a sense of acceptance and perhaps denial of the severe consequences of his lifestyle. John Belushi's party lifestyle, 1980s. The beloved star of Animal House and the Blues Brothers, John Belushi had a reputation for hard partying that ultimately led to his tragic end. In the early 1980s, Belushi's drug and alcohol use was spiraling out of control. Known for his larger-than-life personality, Belushi often indulged in wild parties, which were infamous for their excess and debauchery. Belushi's reckless lifestyle came to a devastating halt in March 1982 when he was found dead in his bungalow at the Chateau Marmont Hotel in Los Angeles. The coroner's report revealed a lethal combination of cocaine and heroin, often referred to as a speedball. His sudden death at the age of 33 shocked the entertainment world and highlighted the dangers of Hollywood's party lifestyle. Belushi's struggle with substance abuse was well known among his friends and colleagues. Efforts were made to help him curb his addictions, but his escalating use of drugs and alcohol made it increasingly difficult. Mickey Rourke's downward spiral, late 1980s. A rising star in the 1980s with films like 9½ Weeks and Angel Heart, Mickey Rourke saw his career nosedive due to his off-screen behavior. In 1989, Rourke was arrested for public intoxication after a bar fight in Los Angeles. Witnesses described the scene as chaotic, with Rourke shouting and throwing punches. This incident was just one of many that highlighted his turbulent lifestyle. Rourke's behavior led to a reputation as a difficult and unreliable actor. Directors were hesitant to work with him, and his career suffered as a result. His erratic actions on set and frequent altercations with co-stars further tarnished his professional image. Rourke later admitted in interviews that his drinking and aggressive behavior were a form of self-destruction. "I was on a path of destruction, and alcohol was my fuel," he said. The late 1980s and 1990s were marked by a series of personal and professional setbacks for Rourke. His marriage to actress Deborah Fewer ended in divorce, and his subsequent relationships were equally tumultuous. His struggles with alcohol and substance abuse continued, leading to more arrests and a further decline in his career. The once promising actor found himself increasingly marginalized in Hollywood, with fewer roles being offered. Rourke's passion for boxing, which he had pursued before becoming an actor, resurfaced during this period. He returned to the ring in the early 1990s, hoping to escape his troubled acting career and personal demons. Although he achieved some success as a boxer, the sport took a physical toll on his body and further isolated him from the film industry. It wasn't until the 2000s that Rourke began to turn his life around. He sought therapy and gradually reduced his alcohol consumption. His comeback role in The Wrestler, 2008, marked a significant turning point, earning him critical acclaim and a Golden Globe Award. Despite his redemption arc, the damage to his career from his earlier behavior was significant and took years to repair. Robert Downey Jr. Struggles, 1990. In the early 90s, Robert Downey Jr. was known for his incredible talent and growing career. However, his substance abuse issues became public knowledge in 1996 when he was arrested in Malibu. Found under the influence of drugs, he was driving erratically and speeding down Sunset Boulevard. Police found heroin, cocaine, and a .357 Magnum revolver in his car. Downey's arrest shocked the entertainment industry and his fans. His talent had been widely recognized, and he had been on a promising career trajectory with roles in films like Less Than Zero and Chaplin, for which he received an Academy Award nomination. The incident in Malibu, however, marked the beginning of a very public struggle with addiction. Downey later said in a court hearing, "It's like I have a shotgun in my mouth, and I've got my finger on the trigger, and I like the taste of gunmetal," poignantly describing the grip addiction had on him. Despite repeated attempts at rehabilitation, his struggle with addiction continued. Between 1996 and 2001, Downey was arrested several times, each incident marking a significant low in his career. His arrests included a 1997 incident where he was found passed out in a neighbor's home, and a 1999 incident where he missed a court-ordered drug test, resulting in a jail sentence. His recurring legal issues led to his being fired from the television series Ally McBeal, a significant blow given his acclaimed performance on the show. The once bright star saw his career prospects dim as Hollywood studios and producers became increasingly reluctant to work with him due to his unpredictability and legal troubles. Throughout these years, Downey's talent remained evident, but his addiction overshadowed his professional achievements. His relationships also suffered, with his first marriage to Deborah Falconer ending in divorce partly due to his substance abuse problems. Despite the support of friends and family, Downey's path to recovery was fraught with setbacks. Some Hollywood stars weren't just heavy drinkers, they were so drunk they had to be carried onto set. Others slurred their lines, forgot entire movies they starred in, or even died with a drink in their hand. This is the dark side of fame, the actors who were completely wasted at all times. John Barrymore. He wasn't just a star. He was Hollywood's first great alcoholic. Long before rehab was an option, he drank himself into a joke. Studios covered for him at first, but by the end, even they couldn't save him. In the 1920s, Barrymore was on top of the world. He had the looks, the voice, and the talent. But off camera, he was rarely sober. His drinking got so bad that directors had to feed him lines off camera because he couldn't remember them. Some days, he couldn't even stand up straight and had to be held up by crew members just to finish a scene. Everyone in Hollywood knew he had a problem. He showed up drunk, stayed drunk, and somehow still got roles, at first. But things fell apart quickly. One night during a live performance, he completely blanked out. Instead of trying to recover, he turned to the audience and slurred, "Line, please?" The show was shut down early, and from then on, everyone knew Barrymore wasn't the same actor anymore. By the 1930s, his drinking wrecked his career. Studios didn't want to risk hiring him, and directors stopped covering for him. Even when friends tried to help, he kept drinking. His body started shutting down, shaking hands, failing memory, and a career in free fall. It wasn't just his career that crumbled. His personal life was a mess. He burned through marriages, lost his fortune, and ruined friendships. He was once considered one of the greatest actors of his time, but by the end he was a cautionary tale. The final years? A disaster. He was broke, sick, and barely able to work. Friends had to help pay his bills, but nothing could stop him from drinking himself to death. And if you think Hollywood let him rest in peace, think again. His so-called friends stole his corpse as a prank, dragging his lifeless body around for one last drunken joke. Barrymore was the blueprint for Hollywood self-destruction. He was the first major star to drink himself into oblivion, but he wouldn't be the last. W.C. Fields. While most stars tried to hide their drinking, Fields didn't even bother. He carried a thermos full of gin everywhere, labeled with innocent words like pineapple juice or orange soda. Everyone knew what was inside, but no one dared to stop him. By the time he made it big in Hollywood, Fields was already a heavy drinker. He had spent years in vaudeville, performing night after night while nursing a constant buzz. Drinking was part of his personality, both on and off screen. He played lovable drunks in films, but behind the scenes he was far from charming when the alcohol took over. His drinking got so bad that directors had to shoot around his hangovers. Mornings were a lost cause. He was either too sick or still drunk. By afternoon, he'd start sipping from his juice thermos just to get through filming. Some days he was so hammered that he slurred entire scenes, forcing multiple retakes. Other times he skipped set entirely, leaving studios scrambling to explain his absence. Fields had a sharp wit, but when he drank, his temper flared. He'd curse out producers, insult his co-stars, and storm off set if something didn't go his way. His drinking wore down his body over time. His once sharp comedic timing started slipping, and so did his health. By the 1940s, his body was failing him. His liver was shot, and doctors warned him that if he didn't quit drinking, he wouldn't last much longer. But Fields didn't care. Instead of quitting, he had a liquor stash built into his hospital room. Nurses would find hidden bottles of whiskey under his mattress, and he'd sneak drinks when no one was looking. He drank until his final breath. When Fields died in 1946, people weren't surprised. His liver had given up long before he did. His career was legendary, but so was his drinking. And unlike other stars, he never tried to pretend otherwise. W.C. Fields wasn't just drunk all the time, he made sure everyone knew it. Errol Flynn. He was the ultimate movie hero, dashing, fearless, and always up for an adventure. But off-screen, he was a reckless alcoholic who drank so much that even Hollywood couldn't keep up with him. If there was a bottle around, Flynn was already ahead of the game. Flynn's drinking wasn't just a bad habit, it was his lifestyle. He'd start his day with champagne, switch to hard liquor by lunch, and keep going until he passed out. Studios tried to hide it, but his drinking made productions a nightmare. He slurred his lines, stumbled through action scenes, and sometimes needed to be propped up just to finish filming. During The Adventures of Robin Hood, 1938, he was so drunk during fight scenes that stunt doubles had to take over more than usual. In They Died with Their Boots On, 1941, he kept falling off his horse because he couldn't stay balanced. Directors grew frustrated, but Flynn's star power kept him employed, at least for a while. His drinking wasn't just for fun. Flynn was self-medicating, drowning out personal demons with endless bottles of rum and whiskey. He was constantly in legal trouble, facing accusations of assault and scandalous affairs. His court cases became just as famous as his movies, but instead of slowing down, he drank even harder. By the 1950s, Hollywood had enough. Studios stopped covering for him, and his reputation crashed. His once chiseled looks were puffed and bloated from years of heavy drinking. His liver was failing, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. In 1959, Flynn's body finally gave up. At just 50 years old, he died of a massive heart attack, but doctors found his organs were destroyed from years of alcohol abuse. His liver was so damaged that they said it looked like he belonged to an 80-year-old man. Flynn was Hollywood's original bad boy, but his addiction was his downfall. He lived fast, drank hard, and never made it to old age. If Hollywood was a party, Flynn drank until the lights went out. Richard Burton. He was a functioning alcoholic who drank his way through nearly every movie he made. Unlike others who tried to hide it, Burton showed up wasted on set and still delivered Oscar-worthy performances. But behind the scenes, his addiction controlled everything. Burton's drinking started early. By his 20s, he was already downing multiple bottles of liquor a day. Success only made it worse. He became one of Hollywood's highest-paid actors, but with that fame came an endless supply of booze. During Cleopatra, 1963, where he met Elizabeth Taylor, he was drunk in nearly every scene. The two fueled each other's addictions, turning their romance into a storm of booze, fights, and makeups. His drinking was legendary. He once chugged 3 bottles of vodka before noon, then went straight to filming like nothing happened. Some directors learned to work around it, shooting scenes early in the day before he got too drunk. Others just gave up, letting Burton slur his way through takes. By the 1970s, his addiction took its toll. His once powerful voice turned hoarse, his sharp looks faded, and his body started breaking down. He tried quitting. Doctors warned him he was drinking himself to death, but every attempt ended the same way: back at the bar. Burton died in 1984 at just 58 years old. His liver was completely shot, and his body was wrecked from decades of drinking. He left behind a legacy of brilliant performances, but also a reputation as one of Hollywood's most tragic drunks. Unlike others who drank themselves out of a career, Burton somehow kept going, but his addiction won in the end. Peter O'Toole. He was a Hollywood legend, but he was also rarely sober. He built a career on charm, wit, and raw talent, while drinking so much that he sometimes couldn't remember filming entire movies. O'Toole's drinking started early. By the time he became famous in Lawrence of Arabia, 1962, he was already drinking more than his body could handle. He was known to down multiple bottles of whiskey in a single night, then show up to set the next morning like nothing happened, until it started affecting his work. His reputation as a drunken genius followed him everywhere. He would slur through scenes, forget his lines, or suddenly fall asleep in the middle of filming. On Goodbye, Mr. Chips, 1969, production shut down multiple times because he was too wasted to work. In interviews, he later admitted, "I have no memory of making some films." His drinking wasn't just a problem for Hollywood. It nearly killed him. In the 1970s, doctors found that years of alcohol abuse had destroyed his stomach lining, leading to internal bleeding and emergency surgery. They told him if he didn't stop drinking, he wouldn't survive. O'Toole tried to quit, but never fully gave it up. He continued acting, but his wild behavior and heavy drinking kept him from reaching his full potential. Even later in life, when he claimed to be sober, people doubted it. His reputation was too legendary. He lived longer than most Hollywood drunks, making it to 81, but his body was wrecked from decades of drinking. When he died in 2013, fans remembered him as a brilliant actor, but also one of Hollywood's most infamous alcoholics. Peter O'Toole didn't just drink, he turned it into an art form. Oliver Reed. His reputation for out-drinking entire bars made him a legend, but it also destroyed his career and eventually his life. Reed's drinking was on another level. He didn't just sip whiskey between takes, he chugged entire bottles. He once challenged 5 Royal Navy sailors to a drinking contest and won, downing over 100 pints of beer in a single session. By the end, he had to be carried out unconscious. On set, he was a nightmare and a spectacle. Directors never knew if they were getting a world-class actor or a slurring disaster. During The Three Musketeers, 1973, he showed up so drunk that he could barely stand. He got through the scenes, but barely. By the 1980s, his drinking had wrecked his reputation. Studios didn't want the risk, and his career spiraled downward. But the real tragedy came during Gladiator, 2000. Reed had been given one last shot at a big role playing Proximo, but instead of staying focused, he went on one final drinking spree. While filming in Malta, he downed 8 pints of beer, 12 shots of rum, half a bottle of whiskey, and a few doubles of cognac, all in one sitting. That night, he collapsed and died of a massive heart attack. His death was so sudden that the film had to use CGI to finish his scenes. Reed had drunk himself to his own tragic ending. Oliver Reed's drinking wasn't just a problem, it was his identity. He outlived many of Hollywood's legendary drunks, but in the end, alcohol still won. Mickey Rourke. He had everything: looks, talent, and a rising career. But instead of building on it, he drank, fought, and burned every bridge in Hollywood. His downfall wasn't just alcohol, but it played a massive role in his destruction. In the 1980s, Rourke was unstoppable. Movies like 9.5 Weeks and Angel Heart made him one of Hollywood's most in-demand actors. But behind the scenes, he was drinking heavily, getting into bar fights, and making himself unhireable. Directors hated working with him because he was either too drunk to perform or too aggressive to control. His drinking wasn't just a problem on set, it ruined his personal life. He trashed relationships, got arrested multiple times, and became known as Hollywood's biggest liability. Instead of cleaning up, he walked away from acting and became a professional boxer, a move that only made things worse. Boxing destroyed his face, but he still drank through the pain. By the late 90s, he was broke, washed up, and completely forgotten by Hollywood. Even he admitted, "I was drinking myself to death." He lost roles, lost friends, and almost lost his life. But somehow, Rourke pulled off a comeback. He got sober, repaired some of the damage, and landed The Wrestler, 2008, a film that mirrored his own self-destructive past. It earned him an Oscar nomination, but even with success, he struggled to stay clean. Mickey Rourke should have been one of Hollywood's greatest legends. Instead, alcohol and bad choices turned him into a cautionary tale. Even today, he's a reminder of how fast Hollywood can chew you up if you let it. Dennis Hopper. He was Hollywood's ultimate wild card. For decades, he was either too drunk, too high, or too unhinged to function. Somehow, he still delivered legendary performances, even when he could barely stand upright. Hopper's drinking started early, but by the time he became famous in Easy Rider, 1969, it was out of control. He drank on set, between takes, and sometimes during filming. He was so wasted while directing the last movie, 1971, that the film became an incoherent disaster, and Hollywood blacklisted him for nearly a decade. During Apocalypse Now, 1979, Hopper was so drunk and coked out that he couldn't remember his lines. Director Francis Ford Coppola had to feed him one sentence at a time because giving him a full script was pointless. Somehow, his manic energy worked for the role, but off-screen, he was a walking train wreck. Hopper's reputation was legendary, but his career kept crashing and burning. He spent most of the 80s either too wasted to work or banned from Hollywood entirely. At his lowest, he lived in the desert, talking to himself and drinking until he hallucinated. He later admitted he was drinking 28 beers, a bottle of whiskey, and doing 3 grams of cocaine every day. Then, out of nowhere, he got sober. In 1986, he made an insane comeback with Blue Velvet, playing one of the most terrifying villains in film history. This time, the madness was acting, not alcohol. Dennis Hopper drank his way through decades of Hollywood, burning bridges and ruining opportunities. But unlike most stars on this list, he actually cleaned up and made it back. His career should have been over, but somehow he outlived his own chaos. Christopher Hitchens. He was Hollywood adjacent, a constant presence in interviews, debates, and film discussions, always with a drink in hand. Unlike most people on this list, he didn't try to hide it. In fact, he embraced his alcoholism and made it part of his public persona. Hitchens drank like it was his job. Mornings started with scotch or wine, and by afternoon he'd moved on to whiskey, vodka, or whatever was available. He once admitted that he was never fully sober past lunchtime. His friends, colleagues, and even his enemies knew that if you were meeting Hitchens, you were meeting Hitchens and his drink. Despite being constantly buzzed, he was brilliant. His ability to debate, write, and command attention never seemed to suffer, at least on the surface. He could drink glass after glass of whiskey, then go on live TV and verbally dismantle his opponents. His mind was razor sharp, even when his liver wasn't. But make no mistake, his drinking had consequences. Friends noticed his once strong voice becoming raspier, his famous wit sometimes losing its edge. He started to look tired, worn down. Years of chain smoking and drinking finally caught up to him. In 2010, he was diagnosed with esophageal cancer, the kind that heavy drinking and smoking practically guarantee. Doctors told him to quit, but he didn't see the point. He once joked that if he had his life to live over again, he would drink more, not less. Even as his body failed him, Hitchens kept writing, debating, and of course, drinking. He saw no reason to stop. It was who he was. In 2011, at 62 years old, he passed away, leaving behind a legacy of brilliant writing, sharp debates, and a lifetime of liquor-fueled intellect. Unlike Hollywood stars who drank themselves into oblivion, Hitchens never spiraled out of control, but his addiction still killed him. He was proof that even the smartest minds aren't invincible when alcohol is in the mix. Nicolas Cage. Unlike the other names on this list, he is still standing, but his reputation as Hollywood's modern-day wildcard has been fueled by years of alcohol, erratic behavior, and bizarre public meltdowns. If old-school stars drank their way into oblivion, Nicolas Cage has drunk his way into internet legend. Cage wasn't always Hollywood's unhinged meme king. In the 90s and early 2000s, he was an A-list actor with an Oscar, blockbuster hits, and critical respect. But behind the scenes, his drinking was getting out of control. Directors noticed his slurred speech, co-stars saw his erratic moods, and soon his performances started getting weirder and more unpredictable. Then, the public meltdowns started. In 2011, Cage was arrested in New Orleans for public drunkenness and disturbing the peace, after getting into a shouting match with his wife. Reports claimed he was stumbling, screaming, and too wasted to control himself. A few years later, he was caught drunkenly singing Prince's Purple Rain at a karaoke bar, so hammered that he could barely stand. The drinking wasn't just a personal issue. It wrecked his finances, too. Cage went on a spending spree fueled by booze and bad decisions, blowing through $150 million on castles, private islands, a dinosaur skull, and a pet octopus. When the IRS came knocking, he had to take every role he could get, leading to the infamous era of low-budget, straight-to-DVD Cage movies. Despite the chaos, Cage never fully collapsed like the drunks of old Hollywood. Somehow, he kept delivering performances, sometimes brilliant, sometimes downright unhinged. His 2018 film Mandy reminded people why he was a star in the first place, and in 2021, Pig earned him some of the best reviews of his career. Unlike Barrymore, Flynn, or Reed, Cage hasn't drunk himself into an early grave. Yet. But his booze-fueled antics, erratic career, and bizarre public breakdowns make him the closest thing modern Hollywood has to an old-school drunken disaster. Whether he crashes completely or somehow reinvents himself again, one thing is certain: Nicolas Cage is never boring.
Most people brush their teeth with toothpaste. She used champagne, not as a joke, not as a one-time dare. Every single day. Dentists warned her. She didn't care. Who was she? And why did she turn something so basic into a symbol of excess? A woman unlike any other. Most people wouldn't dream of replacing water with champagne, but for one Hollywood legend, it was non-negotiable. She didn't just drink it at parties, she lived by it. Hydration, champagne, self-care, champagne, brushing her teeth, you guessed it, champagne. This wasn't a quirky habit she picked up later in life. The seeds of extravagance were planted early. Born into wealth and privilege, she never learned restraint. While most kids were taught discipline, she was encouraged to be exactly who she wanted to be, and what she wanted was everything. By the time she reached adolescence, her personality was already larger than life. She wasn't just rebellious, she was unstoppable. Teachers couldn't control her. Rules meant nothing. If a school didn't meet her expectations, she simply left or got expelled. Either way, it was her decision. Her parents, exasperated but indulgent, sent her to the most prestigious institutions they could find. Maybe structure would tame her. It didn't. The only lessons that stuck were the ones she wanted to learn: drama, literature, and, most importantly, the art of capturing attention. As a teenager, she discovered her greatest skill: commanding a room. It wasn't just about beauty or talent, it was presence. She had an effortless way of making everyone around her feel like they were in the presence of someone important, even if they couldn't quite explain why. That magnetism led her straight to the stage, Broadway to be exact. While other young women were being molded into obedient starlets, she did things her own way. She smoked, swore, and laughed louder than the men. She wasn't trying to fit in. She expected the world to adjust to her, and, incredibly, it did. The making of an icon. By the time she was in her early 20s, she had already conquered Broadway. Critics might have been divided on her wild behavior, but audiences couldn't get enough. She wasn't a polished, delicate starlet. She was unpredictable, electric, alive. Hollywood took notice. Studio heads weren't sure what to make of her. She was brash, unapologetic, and had a voice that could cut through a crowded room like a knife. But there was no denying her talent. She had that rare quality that made people lean in when she spoke, waiting for what she'd say next. She didn't audition for roles, she owned them. Directors knew that once she was on set, she wouldn't just read lines, she'd command the screen. Her charisma was so overpowering that co-stars often found themselves reduced to background noise. But Hollywood came with rules. It expected women to be demure, well-behaved, controlled. That wasn't her style. She drank, smoked, and swore like a sailor. She talked openly about things actresses weren't supposed to mention: sex, politics, money. And yet, studios couldn't resist her. They cleaned up her image in glossy magazine spreads, trying to sell her as another glamorous, sophisticated leading lady. But no matter how much makeup, lighting, or editing they applied, they couldn't erase the truth. She wasn't just acting. She was the role. Every part she played felt like an extension of herself. Fierce, unfiltered, magnetic. Audiences ate it up. But fame didn't change her. If anything, it made her more reckless. While other actresses carefully curated their images, she leaned into chaos. If reporters asked her a question, she answered with brutal honesty. If a party got dull, she found a way to liven it up, often with a dramatic entrance, an unexpected striptease, or a scandalous remark designed to make headlines. She wasn't just famous, she was notorious. And she didn't care. Hollywood wanted to control her. Instead, she made it clear she was going to play by her rules. And that was just the beginning. The Broadway takeover. Before Hollywood tried to tame her, Broadway was the perfect playground. There were no cameras to censor her, no studio heads demanding she behave, just a stage, an audience, and the raw energy she thrived on. She didn't just perform, she consumed the spotlight. Critics struggled to describe her. She wasn't graceful, but she was mesmerizing. She didn't deliver lines, she attacked them. Every performance felt spontaneous, as if she might change the entire script on a whim just to see what would happen. Audiences were hooked. They didn't just come to see the play, they came to see her. Would she show up sober? Would she insult a co-star mid-scene? Would she break the fourth wall just to mock a critic in the front row? Anything was possible. One night, when a fellow actor fumbled a line, she didn't cover for him. She doubled down. "Darling, if you can't remember the words, at least say something clever," she quipped, sending the audience into hysterics. That was her power. No one knew what she'd do next, and that unpredictability made her irresistible. Her reputation grew beyond the stage. New York nightlife belonged to her. She could outdrink the men, outwit the socialites, and outshine the biggest personalities of the era. If a party didn't include her, it wasn't worth attending. But Broadway wasn't enough. She wanted a bigger stage, and Hollywood was starting to realize that no matter how unruly she was money. Studios had seen her name in the papers too many times to ignore her. Even with the scandals, the rumors, and the endless stream of outrageous behavior, one thing was clear. When she was on stage, people watched. Hollywood's wildest star. When she arrived in Hollywood, she wasn't just another actress looking for a break. She was a Broadway legend with a reputation so big it could barely fit through the studio gates. Directors knew she was trouble. Producers knew she was unpredictable. But they also knew one thing. If they put her on screen, people would watch. Her first films proved what Broadway fans already knew. She wasn't just talented, she was electric. She didn't act so much as dominate the screen. Whether she played a seductress, a villain, or a tragic lead, audiences couldn't take their eyes off her. But Hollywood came with rules. Studios controlled their stars like products, dictating everything from their diets to their love lives. That wasn't going to happen with her. She refused to be molded into the typical Hollywood starlet. If they wanted her, they had to take all of her, scandal, sharp tongue, and champagne obsession included. And the champagne? It was everywhere. She drank it on set, kept bottles in her dressing room, and made sure every party had a steady supply. The stories about her started to sound impossible. She was rumored to have bathed in it, used it to wash her hair, and even brushed her teeth with it. Directors begged her to behave. She laughed in their faces. She was kicked off sets for arriving late, or sometimes not at all. She openly insulted the Hollywood elite, calling them dull and predictable. If a leading man annoyed her, she let him know, sometimes with words, sometimes by knocking back his drink in one gulp and walking away. The press couldn't get enough. Every headline was wilder than the last. Actress stirs up scandal at studio gala. Hollywood starlet's outrageous party leaves guests speechless. Leading lady prefers champagne to water. Dentists horrified. The studio system wasn't built for someone like her. They wanted obedient, polished stars who followed orders. She wasn't here to follow anything. Hollywood had created its own monster, and it had no idea how to contain her. Scandals, rumors, and unapologetic living. As her fame skyrocketed, so did the stories about her. Some were true, some exaggerated, and some so outrageous they sounded made up. Except with her, anything felt possible. She had no interest in hiding who she was. While other actresses carefully protected their images, she welcomed controversy. She spoke openly about sex, drank more than any of her male co-stars, and cursed like a sailor in an era when women were expected to be demure. The rumors fueled her legend. One of the most famous? She supposedly despised water so much that she replaced it entirely with champagne. Not just for drinking, she allegedly washed her face with it, rinsed her hair with it, and even brushed her teeth with it. When asked if it was true, she never denied it. Instead, she'd flash her signature grin and say, "Why ruin a good story with the truth?" Dentists warned her about the damage she was doing to her enamel. She didn't care. By this point, her reckless habits were as much a part of her persona as her performances. Beyond her personal indulgences, she had a habit of stirring up scandal in public. She made crude jokes in interviews, gave blunt opinions about her peers, and treated Hollywood's biggest events like her personal playground. Once, at a high society dinner, she reportedly took off her mink coat and revealed she wasn't wearing anything underneath. The film industry had never seen anyone like her. While other actresses played by the rules to maintain their careers, she seemed to thrive on breaking them. But it wasn't just rebellion for the sake of it. She was proving a point. She refused to be controlled. Of course, Hollywood had its limits, even for her. The industry tolerated her chaos as long as she was bringing in money. But how long could they let her run wild before the consequences caught up? At some point, even the biggest stars have to pay the price. And for her, the bill was about to arrive. The champagne obsession. By now, the stories about her were legendary, but nothing fascinated people more than Tallulah Bankhead's relationship with champagne. It wasn't just her drink of choice, it was practically a personality trait. While others reached for water to quench their thirst, she reached for a bottle of bubbly. She was never seen without a glass in hand. At parties, on film sets, even during interviews, it didn't matter. She once quipped, "I don't drink water. Fish do unspeakable things in it." That line alone cemented her reputation as Hollywood's most extravagant drinker. But the real shock came when rumors spread that Bankhead wasn't just drinking champagne, she was using it for hygiene. People whispered that she washed her hair with it, splashed it on her face as a toner, and, most bizarrely, brushed her teeth with it. When confronted with these rumors, she never gave a straight answer. Instead, she let the gossip swirl, knowing it only made her more infamous. But those close to her swore it wasn't a joke. She really did it. Dentists warned her. The acid in champagne was eroding her enamel, making her teeth vulnerable to decay. But she had little interest in medical advice. In fact, she dismissed health concerns altogether. If champagne was ruining her teeth, so be it. She had no plans to change. For her, champagne wasn't just a drink. It was a lifestyle. It represented indulgence, rebellion, and a refusal to conform. In a town obsessed with image, she refused to take anything seriously. And yet, her excess had a cost. The years of partying, drinking, and ignoring warnings were catching up. Hollywood had a way of chewing people up and spitting them out, and as much as she pretended to be untouchable, cracks were beginning to show. The price of extravagance. For years, she lived as if consequences didn't exist. Bankhead drank what she wanted, said what she wanted, and ignored every warning thrown her way. But excess always comes with a price, and she was starting to feel the bill. The long nights of drinking and partying were catching up. Her once effortless charm began to waver. The sharp wit that made her irresistible started turning against her. Some called it self-destruction. Others saw it as inevitable. Either way, Hollywood was watching her unravel. Physically, the toll was undeniable. The years of champagne abuse had done more than just fuel gossip. It had ruined her teeth. Those close to her claimed her enamel was wearing away, leading to painful dental issues. But when dentists urged her to stop, she laughed them off. The damage was already done. Professionally, the industry's patience was running thin. Hollywood had always been willing to tolerate bad behavior, as long as the box office numbers were good. But her unpredictability was becoming a liability. Showing up late was one thing. Not showing up at all was another. Directors dreaded working with her. Producers saw her as a financial risk. The same studios that once fought for her name on a marquee were now looking for safer options. And then there was the drinking. It had gone from a party trick to something darker. Friends noticed that the wild, rebellious spirit had been replaced with something more desperate. The industry loved a good scandal, but it had no patience for downward spirals. Bankhead was still a star. But in Hollywood, being a star wasn't enough. You had to be marketable, and she was slipping out of favor. The end of an era. She had spent years bending Hollywood to her will, refusing to conform, refusing to play by anyone's rules but her own. But by now the industry had moved on. The same rebellious spirit that once made her irresistible was now making her unhireable. Producers had grown tired of the unpredictability. Directors weren't willing to gamble on an actress who might show up late, or not at all. The studios that once cleaned up her messes were now looking for fresh faces, women who were easier to control, easier to sell. Bankhead hadn't changed, but Hollywood had. By the time the 1940s arrived, the industry was shifting. The wild excess of the previous decades was giving way to a more polished, controlled system. Starlets were expected to be elegant, refined, scandal-free. There was no room for someone who treated movie sets like an afterthought and press interviews like a personal comedy routine. Her roles started drying up. The scripts that once came pouring in slowed to a trickle, then stopped altogether. The clubs she once ruled were filling up with a younger crowd, people who whispered about her like she was a relic of another time. And then her body started failing her too. The years of indulgence had taken their toll. The champagne habit that had fueled her legend had also fueled her decline. Health issues became harder to ignore. The dentists had been right. Her teeth were in terrible shape. And the drinking wasn't just part of the act anymore. It was a crutch. Despite it all, Bankhead refused to be pitied. If people expected her to retreat into quiet obscurity, they were wrong. She still held court at parties, still delivered razor-sharp one-liners, still made headlines, even if the headlines weren't always flattering. But the truth was unavoidable. Hollywood had outgrown her. The enduring legend of an eccentric. She may have faded from Hollywood's spotlight, but she never faded from conversation. Even as her film career slowed, her legend only grew. The stories, the scandals, the infamous champagne obsession. People couldn't stop talking about Tallulah Bankhead. The new generation of actresses were carefully controlled, groomed to be flawless public figures. She had been anything but. In an industry that thrived on illusion, she was raw, unfiltered, and unapologetic. And for that, she became a different kind of icon. Even those who had never seen her films knew of her. She wasn't just another leading lady, she was a symbol of defiance. The woman who drank too much, spoke too freely, and laughed in the face of every expectation. The rumor that she brushed her teeth with champagne? It never died. It became part of her mythology, another outrageous detail in a life that felt too wild to be real. Some dismissed it as gossip, others swore it was true. She never confirmed or denied it. Why would she? The mystery was half the fun. Even in her later years, Bankhead refused to let the world forget her. While other aging actresses faded into quiet retirement, she stayed loud. She made shocking public appearances, threw extravagant parties, and gave interviews that made journalists question if they should even print what she said. Hollywood may have turned its back on her, but the public never did. They loved her, flaws and all. Her famous one-liners became legendary, endlessly quoted in books and articles. Her rebellious spirit inspired future stars who wished they could break free from Hollywood's tight grip the way she had. Of course, there were those who dismissed her, who said she was reckless, that she could have had a longer, more stable career if she had just played the game. But that was never an option. She had lived exactly how she wanted to, on her own terms, by her own rules. The Hollywood's untamed rebel. For decades, people have repeated the stories, the scandalous affairs, the razor-sharp wit, the wild parties, the woman who treated champagne like water, who defied every rule Hollywood tried to enforce. She wasn't just a star, she was a storm. Tallulah Bankhead didn't play the Hollywood game. She made her own rules and dared the industry to keep up. They tried for a while, but in the end, no one could tame her. Her disdain for water was as famous as her performances. The rumors that she brushed her teeth with champagne? They stuck because they seemed possible. After all, this was the same woman who once told a director, "I'll come to rehearsal when I damn well please." The same woman who strolled into high society parties, coat draped over her shoulders, only to reveal she had nothing on underneath. She lived for spectacle. And unlike other Hollywood legends, she never sugarcoated anything. She spoke openly about sex, about her vices, about the absurdity of celebrity itself. When asked if she had ever been married, she famously quipped, "I've had a man's arms around me, but no man's yoke." By the time Hollywood lost interest, she had already cemented her place in history. The roles dried up, but the stories never did. Even in her later years, when the parties slowed and her body betrayed her, she kept the act going. She still cracked jokes, still drank, still lived as if she'd never left the spotlight. And even after she was gone, her influence lingered. Actresses envied her freedom. Writers quoted her without realizing it. The industry she once terrorized never quite forgot her. Tallulah Bankhead didn't fade away. She made sure of that. She wasn't the richest, she wasn't the most powerful, but she was the wildest, the boldest, the one who Hollywood never quite figured out what to do with. And if that meant brushing her teeth with champagne, then so be it. Some of the old-time Hollywood celebrities were into stuff you wouldn't believe, from having weird obsessions with scat
It is Austin.
to something as bizarre as an irrational fear for the color purple. There is no denying the fact that most of what you're about to be exposed to make absolutely no sense. Charles Laughton's weird diet. In his memoir, Full Service, My Adventures in Hollywood and the Sex Lives of the Stars, Scotty Bowers claims to have either slept with or arranged sexual liaisons for hundreds of the best-known celebrities during Hollywood's golden age. One of the most shocking stories involves British actor Charles Laughton. But that's not all. According to Bowers, Laughton once asked him to bring over a young male guest while his wife was out. When Bowers and the young man arrived, Laughton began making a sandwich.
He carefully sliced up lettuce and tomatoes, arranged them on sourdough bread, added a bit of lemon juice, and sprinkled some salt and pepper. This is where it gets interesting. After a few minutes of prep work, Lawton took the bread slices in one hand, picked up a pot with the other, and asked the young man to follow him into the bathroom. But what happened next will shock you. Here's what Bowers describes. Charles was the first to return. He put the plate with the bread slices on the kitchen table. I could see that the lettuce and tomatoes had been lightly smeared with a light brown substance. Seconds later, Ted appeared in the kitchen. His erection was gone, and he was looking decidedly sheepish, perhaps even a trifle embarrassed. I stared at him curiously, and he pulled a face, hoping that Charles wouldn't notice. He pointed at the bread slices on the plate and then lightly patted his backside. And then, believe it or not, Lawton ate the sandwich. Ronald Reagan's obsession with young virgins. Ronald Reagan is often remembered more for his political career than his time in Hollywood, but back in the 1940s and 50s he was one of Tinseltown's leading men. But that's not all. One of the most cringe-inducing rumors about Reagan's Hollywood days comes from his co-star in the 1950 drama Louisa, Piper Laurie. She claims that the future GOP icon took her virginity when he was 39 years old, and she was just 18. But what happened next will shock you. In her memoir, Laurie writes that Reagan first seduced her on the set of their film Louisa, where he played her father. At first, Reagan seemed like a true gentleman. He even asked Laurie's mother for permission to take her on a date. Sounds charming, right? But instead of the glamorous evening Laurie had imagined, Reagan took both her and her mother to his house, where he cooked hamburger steak and salad. This is where it gets interesting. After dinner, things took a strange turn. Reagan led Laurie back to the bedroom. According to her, the actor was an insensitive show-off in bed. He bragged about how long he'd been erect, 40 whole minutes, and how much his condom had cost. But that's not all. Laurie also recounts that Reagan was far from a considerate lover. Not only did he fail to pleasure her, but when she mentioned her lack of an orgasm, his response was harsh and critical. According to her, he said, "There's something wrong with you that you should fix." Howard Hughes's extreme obsession with hygiene. Howard Hughes, the brilliant yet enigmatic tycoon, had a mind that worked in extraordinary ways. His achievements in aviation, film, and business were nothing short of legendary. But alongside his brilliance, there was a peculiar and relentless obsession that dominated his life: cleanliness. Imagine a man so consumed by the fear of germs that he would lock himself away in dark rooms for days, sometimes even weeks. Hughes turned his lavish homes into fortresses of solitude, meticulously sealed to keep out any potential contamination. The windows were often covered, creating a gloomy, almost eerie atmosphere, as if he were living in a perpetual twilight. Hughes's hand-washing routine was nothing short of ritualistic. Picture this. He would wash his hands repeatedly, scrubbing them until they were raw and sometimes even bleeding. It wasn't just a quick rinse. It was a painstaking process, as if he were trying to scrub away invisible threats. His fear of germs was so intense that he believed even the slightest contact could lead to illness or infection. But Hughes's obsession didn't stop at hand-washing. He went to extraordinary lengths to avoid human contact altogether. For instance, if he had to meet someone, he would often communicate through notes or intercom systems, avoiding face-to-face interactions. He would use tissues to touch objects and had a meticulous system for handling everyday items to ensure they remained uncontaminated. Hughes's peculiarities extended to his instructions to staff and associates. He once demanded that all canned food be meticulously washed and scrubbed before opening. Imagine the bewilderment of his staff as they followed these bizarre instructions, knowing that any deviation could trigger one of Hughes's infamous outbursts. Even when he was flying, Hughes couldn't escape his fears. His custom-built planes were designed with his germophobia in mind. He often flew alone or with minimal crew, ensuring that the aircraft remained as sterile as possible. The irony of an aviation pioneer afraid of the very air he conquered is striking, isn't it? Hughes's obsession with cleanliness and germs was a constant battle in his mind. Despite his towering intellect and achievements, he was trapped by his own fears. This relentless battle between his rational, inventive side and his irrational, obsessive side created a fascinating yet tragic figure. The man who soared to great heights in both the literal and metaphorical sense was, in many ways, grounded by his own mind. Mae West's astrology obsession. Mae West, a name synonymous with boldness and wit, was a star who dazzled both on and off the screen. But behind her larger-than-life persona and sultry quips lay a fascination that guided many of her choices. Astrology. Mae West was deeply obsessed with astrology. This wasn't just a casual interest or a passing fancy, it was a central pillar of her decision-making process. Imagine a woman who, despite her confidence and unshakable self-assuredness, would not make any major life decisions without first consulting her astrologer. Whether it was a career move, a personal relationship, or even the timing of her day-to-day activities, the stars had to align for Mae. Her belief in astrology was so profound that it influenced her creative work. She wrote a play called The Constant Sinner, which was steeped in astrological themes. The narrative wasn't just a backdrop for her characters. It was interwoven with the celestial movements and zodiac signs that Mae believed so deeply in. This wasn't just art imitating life. It was life, love, and destiny dictated by the cosmos. Think about the confidence and assertiveness Mae West exuded in every role she played and every public appearance she made. Now imagine that same woman, with all her bravado, quietly consulting her astrologer in private, seeking guidance from the alignment of planets and stars. It's a striking contrast, isn't it? The idea that such a powerful figure would defer to celestial charts and predictions adds a fascinating layer to her already complex persona. Astrology wasn't just a hobby for Mae West, it was a way of life. She saw the patterns and signs as a roadmap, helping her navigate the tumultuous landscape of Hollywood and her personal life. This deep-rooted belief in the stars provided her with a sense of control and direction, a way to make sense of the often unpredictable nature of fame and fortune. Marlene Dietrich and collecting men's clothes. Beyond her screen persona, Marlene had an intriguing obsession that set her apart from her contemporaries, a fascination with men's clothing. This wasn't just a passing fancy or a quirky interest. It was a profound passion that influenced both her personal life and her public image. Dietrich didn't merely collect men's clothing, she wore it with a sense of ease and confidence that challenged the norms of her time. In an era when women were expected to adhere to strict fashion conventions, Dietrich's choice to don suits, trousers, and tailored shirts was nothing short of revolutionary. Picture her walking into a Hollywood event in a perfectly fitted tuxedo, her hair meticulously styled, and her makeup flawless. The image was striking and unforgettable, making a powerful statement about gender and fashion. She was one of the first women to popularize androgynous fashion in Hollywood. Her style wasn't about rejecting femininity, but about embracing a broader spectrum of identity. By wearing men's clothing, Dietrich played with societal expectations, blending masculinity and femininity in a way that was both provocative and liberating. She made it clear that clothing was an expression of self, not a strict adherence to gender norms. Dietrich's fascination with men's clothing went beyond the surface. She appreciated the craftsmanship, the structure, and the way these garments allowed her to move and present herself. Collecting these pieces became a hobby, a form of self-expression, and a way to assert her individuality. Imagine her private wardrobe, filled with an array of perfectly tailored suits, each piece carefully chosen and cherished. Her influence extended far beyond her personal collection. Dietrich's androgynous style inspired countless designers and fashion enthusiasts, paving the way for future generations to explore and embrace non-traditional fashion choices. She wasn't just a style icon. She was a pioneer who challenged the fashion industry's rigid boundaries. Peter Sellers' obsession against the color purple. Most people have typical fears like heights, snakes, or spiders, but Peter Sellers, he had a bizarre terror of the color purple. Now, Sellers' eccentricity wasn't the lovable, bumbling kind he often portrayed in his roles. It was far more chaotic and disturbing, making him a difficult person to be around. On film sets, Sellers was infamous for his explosive outbursts. Imagine him in a fit of rage, yelling at his wives, smashing dishes, and even brandishing a shotgun to vent his anger. His tantrums didn't stop there. He clashed with directors and producers, despite their higher status, and would often get lower-level staff fired if they crossed him. His erratic behavior was compounded by his vague racism and intense superstitions. One superstition in particular involved the famed director Vittorio De Sica. While they were working on After the Fox, Sellers saw De Sica berate a script girl for wearing purple. The director ominously declared that purple was the color of death. This statement profoundly impacted Sellers, who became convinced that the color purple could kill. From then on, Sellers' fear of purple dominated his actions. Any time he encountered the color, he'd fly into a panic, throwing tantrums and insisting it be removed. This irrational fear added yet another layer of unpredictability to an already volatile personality, making life around him a constant challenge. Charlie Chaplin's obsession with younger women. Charlie Chaplin, the legendary actor, filmmaker, and comedian, known for his iconic character, the Little Tramp, also had a much darker side to his personal life. Beyond the silver screen, Chaplin's relationships were the subject of much controversy, largely due to his well-known obsession with very young women. This fixation shaped his personal and professional life in ways that continue to spark debate. Chaplin's first marriage was to Mildred Harris in 1918, when he was 29 and she was just 16. Their relationship began when Harris was only 15, highlighting the significant age difference and Chaplin's preference for much younger partners. The marriage was short-lived, lasting only 2 years, but it set a precedent for Chaplin's future romantic endeavors. Following his divorce from Harris, Chaplin embarked on a series of relationships with teenage girls. His second marriage was to Lita Gray, who was 16 when they started their relationship and 18 when they married in 1924. Chaplin was 35 at the time. Their union was fraught with difficulties from the start. Gray's youth and inexperience clashed with Chaplin's controlling nature, leading to a tumultuous relationship that ended in a highly publicized and acrimonious divorce. The divorce proceedings revealed many sordid details about Chaplin's behavior, further cementing his controversial reputation. Despite the scandal, Chaplin continued to pursue young women. His third marriage was to Paulette Goddard, a rising star in Hollywood, who was 21 when they met, and Chaplin was 47. Though their marriage was kept relatively private and the age gap was not as stark as in his previous relationships, the pattern of significant age differences persisted. Chaplin's fourth and final marriage was to Una O'Neill, the daughter of playwright Eugene O'Neill. Una was just 18 when she married Chaplin, who was 54 at the time. This marriage, despite the age gap, proved to be the most stable and enduring of Chaplin's life. They remained together until Chaplin's death in 1977, and they had 8 children. Una's unwavering support and devotion seemed to bring Chaplin a semblance of the stability that had eluded him in his previous relationships. His preference for young women was not limited to his marriages. He was known to have numerous relationships with teenage girls throughout his life, often starting when the girls were still minors. This behavior, while not uncommon in the early 20th century, drew significant criticism and legal challenges. In one notable case, Chaplin faced a paternity suit from actress Joan Barry, who was 23 years younger than him. The case, which included allegations of coercion and manipulation, was widely covered by the media and further tarnished Chaplin's public image. The controversy surrounding Chaplin's relationships with young women has led to a complex legacy. On one hand, he is celebrated as a genius of early cinema, whose contributions to film and comedy are unparalleled. On the other hand, his personal life raises uncomfortable questions about the dynamics of power and exploitation. Chaplin's behavior reflects the broader societal attitudes of his time, where older men often pursued younger women, sometimes with dire consequences. Gloria Swanson's obsession with health and fasting. Gloria Swanson, one of Hollywood's most glamorous and enduring stars, was not only known for her striking beauty and acting prowess, but also for her intense dedication to health foods and fasting. Decades before the wellness industry became mainstream, Swanson was a pioneer in the realm of health and nutrition, turning her lifestyle into a fervent obsession that shaped her daily routines and public persona. Swanson's journey into the world of health foods and fasting began at a time when processed foods were becoming increasingly popular in America. Rejecting this trend, she delved into natural and organic eating habits, believing that what she consumed had a direct impact on her overall well-being and longevity. Her approach to diet was meticulous and uncompromising. She scrutinized every ingredient, ensuring that her meals were not only nutritious but also free from any artificial additives or preservatives. Her commitment to healthy foods extended beyond just eating organic produce. Swanson embraced a diet rich in raw vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds, long before such dietary choices became fashionable. She was particularly fond of juicing, often preparing fresh vegetable and fruit juices to maintain her energy and vitality. This dedication to a clean diet was not merely a fad for Swanson. It was a deeply ingrained lifestyle choice that she believed was essential for sustaining her health and beauty. In addition to her strict dietary habits, Swanson was a firm believer in the benefits of fasting. She would often embark on long fasts, abstaining from food for extended periods to cleanse her body and mind. These fasts were not just about physical health. Swanson saw them as a way to achieve mental clarity and spiritual renewal. Her fasting routines were rigorous, sometimes lasting several days, during which she would consume only water or freshly squeezed juices. This practice was unconventional and even controversial at the time, but Swanson was unwavering in her belief in its benefits. Swanson's obsession with health foods and fasting was also evident in her social interactions and public appearances. She often spoke about her dietary practices, sharing her knowledge and experiences with others. She became an advocate for healthy living, encouraging those around her to adopt similar habits. Her influence extended to her close circle of friends and colleagues in Hollywood, many of whom were inspired by her dedication and began to explore healthier lifestyles themselves. Her commitment to health was not without its challenges. Swanson faced skepticism and criticism from those who viewed her practices as extreme or unnecessary. However, she remained steadfast, confident in the knowledge that her choices were beneficial. Her dedication to health and wellness was a testament to her discipline and determination, qualities that also defined her illustrious career. Swanson's approach to health was holistic. She believed in the interconnectedness of physical, mental, and emotional well-being. This belief guided her lifestyle choices, from her diet and fasting routines to her emphasis on regular exercise and stress management. She practiced yoga and meditation, long before these practices became popular in the West, as part of her daily regimen to maintain balance and harmony in her life. Her obsession with health foods and fasting also influenced her work. Swanson often took on roles that reflected her personal beliefs, portraying characters who embodied strength, resilience, and a sense of well-being. Her off-screen persona, as a health-conscious and disciplined individual, became an integral part of her public image, distinguishing her from many of her contemporaries.